Hello and welcome back to Tea Time with Alan and Pete. Today, Alan is in a new venue. He's in his storage unit, as you can see.
It's my boxnasium. I combine my office with a storage space because this is part of the job of a reviewer. You get used to cardboard, and unfortunately, your wife never does. But anyway.
Yes. Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about turntables, specifically turntables under £3,000. And we've kind of put together a selection of 5 or 6 turntables under £3,000 of note. And we're just going to have a chat about those. So
Sure. I mean, first things first, a little sip of tea.
N. What's the N?
Anyway, first things first, we're in a great time at the moment because the vinyl revival has meant that we've been able to get, not only have we got some wonderful turntables that are extremely expensive and extremely good, but the engineering skills that have happened, engineering has become a hell of a lot better at all prices. So suddenly we've got products that were 15, 20, 30 years ago a little too cheap to well engineer, and now the engineering is sufficiently good that they're excellent. And when it comes down to turntables, engineering is the big thing, because if you have something that's well made, there's some basic points about speed control and the ability for the arm to travel completely unfettered make a big difference between a turntable that either sounds good or doesn't, or a turntable that, in worst case scenario, can wreck your records. So we've got to a point now where the very good is still excellent and is an order of magnitude better, but the good that you can get for £1,000 or £1,000 to £3,000 is entirely doable. So yeah.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because as I'm sure we all know, there's a big resurgence, and it's becoming a cool thing to have vinyl for teenagers and young 20-somethings, and playing vinyl is actually a thing. And of course, a lot of artists now are producing vinyl because it's become trendy again, if you like.
Well, yeah, I mean, when the original vinyl revival happened sort of about 10 years ago, the concern was that it was just a hipster trend. It was just a hipster fad. And it's sort of 10 years later, the hipsters have gone away, but the trend is still there. People buy that. I mean, what we found is, in a way, people use digital analog in a way that they've never done before, that vinyl is the collectible thing, both in terms of sound quality and in terms of the artwork and everything else. It's very tangible thing, and of course that makes a big difference between somebody who's a digital guy, because they'll have a lot of their collection isn't their collection. It's stuff that they listen to on streaming. But for the things that they really want to sort of take pride in owning, they will buy it on vinyl often. I mean, they're more likely to buy it on vinyl than they are on CD, although there is a start of a CD revival coming too. But that's still some way away.
I know quite a few people who will buy 2 albums of the same thing on vinyl, so they can have one in mint condition and one that they play. With a view to realizing, I guess, that specific albums increase in value and will be, who knows what's happening in the future, whether they will increase in value. But it's an interesting concept. Essentially, you're buying 2 of the same, which is boosting the number of sales, but actually it's almost like a false boost because it's 2 for 1 type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think in some respects, what we used to have with traditional collectors, music loving collectors, vinyl collectors, they would have their collections be measured in rooms, in terms of, you would have 2 or 3 rooms given over to collecting vinyl, as I have with cardboard, but they would have several thousand LPs, and the new generation won't, in part because the cost of a new record is quite high, but also they will tend to have maybe a couple of hundred albums that they really love, and those are the things that they absolutely cherish. And for everything else, it doesn't suddenly mean they have a record collection of, that's all they play. They will play thousands and thousands of tracks, but they'll do them through online sources. They'll do them through Spotify, through Tidal, through Qobuz, and all of those things dovetail. They work really well. Somebody listens, for example, they listen on Spotify as a music discovery source, which is what it's great for. And they'll listen to something and they think, oh yeah, that's fine, I'm not that interested in it, but that's good music. And then occasionally they'll hear something and they think, I want that album for whatever reason. And that's where vinyl comes in. So yeah, the collection is not necessarily as broad as it was before in terms of vinyl, but it's certainly it's deeper. It's a deeper and more used collection, which is great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously it's great to have vinyl, but without an analog source,
A good turntable, it's just objet d'art.
Absolutely. So that kind of moves us nicely onto the subject matter. So yeah, as I say, we identified a number of turntables at under £3,000 that we thought we'd talk about. So in no particular order. So one of the ones was the Gold Note. It was the Pianosa. And that's with the it's the B 5.1 tone arm.
Yep.
It's all in all, for us, the standard finish is £2,230. I think they offer a walnut finish for £2,500.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the Gold Note turntables, they come as a complete package. So although we do define it with the turntable and arm, principally they are a complete turnkey turntable. And what I like about the Gold Notes is that they managed to combine good performance with really, really good looks. And I think one of the things with the turntable, as opposed to everything else, so the CD player, a streamer, an amplifier, anything else, if you really want, you can hide them away somewhere. But when it comes to a turntable, it's got to be out on a shelf. It's got to be out there in front. So it's worthwhile sometimes having a thing that looks as good as it sounds. And when it comes to that, I mean, the Gold Notes are lovely. I mean, they're good sounding turntables. Don't get me wrong. They're very musical. They're very open sounding. They're very rich sounding. But they're also incredibly good looking decks. So yeah,
that is important, I think, isn't it? Because it's as you say, it's a stylish piece. It's something that people see. You can't hide it away so much in a cupboard as you can with other components. But yeah, of course, Italian made, Italian style.
Yeah.
And then we had the Verter, the Verter DG1.
Yep.
It was in at £2,750, I believe.
Yeah.
Which again it's a nice looking piece of kit.
Yeah. I mean, Verter has a long reputation for making turntables, even before it was Verter. Tourage, who runs the company, was the principal designer behind the Roxanne Xerxes, which goes back into the mid-80s. And a lot of the technology that he developed and he learned there has filtered through to the Verter range, but also been radically improved. And what he found is that he started out by making, I think his first vinyl product in the new Verter company was the reference tone arm, and that's like a fantastic piece of equipment, but it's £30,000 or something like that. And obviously he worked out that not everyone can afford that, but there are ways and means of leveraging that technology at a more affordable level. And he then introduced turntables that matched, and he's produced them until he's got to a turntable that again is a pretty much a complete turnkey package. I think since we reviewed it, there is now a cartridge as a moving magnet cartridge that they supply with it. And that is a fine system. I mean, as we said, another one, it looks great. I mean, differently great to the Gold Note. The Gold Note's very much a sort of wooden wonder, and this is very much a more sort of perspex I can't find the alliteration for that, but it's a perfect perspex. I don't know. But yeah, it's again, it's a lovely sounding. That's a really lovely sounding turntable. It's got a real sort of energy to it, which you'd have to spend an awful lot more to replicate without sacrificing something else in the process. So it's a good one.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Another one in our lineup is from Technics, obviously very well known. That comes in at just within our price range. £2,999 is the SL 1200. Is it GEGS? I think is what they call it. Well known for their catchy product names, obviously.
Yeah, but in fairness, the Technics 1200 in all its guises is an icon. I mean, it was the standard issue DJ turntable for years, for good reason. It has a almost unburstable DC motor on it, which will start up fast, stop fast, and sounds really good. Back in the sort of latter half of the first decade of this century, Technics thought that the turntable market was going away, and they discontinued this iconic turntable just at the time as the vinyl revival happened. Now, many companies would sit there and say, okay, we messed up, but we'll deal with it. Technics recognized that this was an icon of a restarted age, and rebuilt the factory, rebuilt everything, started Technics SL 1200s again, but then made them better. I mean, the standard DJ deck is still available, but when you get to the sort of the models like the GEG, which is a kind of limited edition one, they're built a lot better. There's an awful lot more. There's a heavier platter. It's very much taking from their top line of things like the SL 1000, which again is 10,000. I can't remember, 1,000, 10,000 numbers. It's numbers. They're all different, but when you get to that level, you're dealing with an incredibly hefty platter that you're moving. So it's a tough thing to build. It's a very complex piece of engineering. We get back to engineering again. It's going to be a thread running through turntables. But this is a piece of engineering that realistically would have been tens of thousands a few years ago. And they managed to, well, 10,000 a few years ago, but they've managed to build something that is really, really good sounding. And Technics, when it sort of went away and it came back, people reevaluated it. Toward the audiophile community were a bit sniffy about the Technics 1200 when it was the first time around. When it came back, they took a chance to reevaluate it and look at it honestly, and it's a damn good deck. It remains a really good deck, not just because it starts and stops like that, but because it's actually a very good sounding turntable. It's very, very potent. It's very tight, very clean, very good rhythm, very good, very precise. Just a great deck. With that one, the arm is a standard. You do probably have to find a good cartridge for it, and not just necessarily the standard DJ type things, because that deserves so much more. A good Audio-Technica moving coil or something of that ilk just really sings on that turntable.
I think the other thing is worth just mentioning, and hopefully you can explain this for those people that maybe aren't aware of it. Is it, do they call it the stroboscopic?
Yeah, what Technics, what many companies have is that they'll run a little light against some notches cut into the platter in the case of the Technics. Because that light runs off the mains, it will work at the same sort of frequency as your turntable. When you suddenly see that the 33 RPM 50 hertz point, these little grooves in the platter will stay still, which means you're running at precisely 33 and a third RPM. So it's a clever way of showing the precision of the speed control. But beneath that, there's a whole lot of engineering, this time electronic engineering, to keep that speed control incredibly strict. Now with the Technics, because it was a DJ deck and remains still in that sort of vein, there's a speed control that will up and down the speed relative to 33 or 45 RPM, just a little bit, enough so that DJs could mix tracks together quite easily. But also it allows a little bit of wiggle room. Some people like to, there's always rumors, things like Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. It was rumored that it was cut a bit fast or cut a bit slow. I can't remember, but there was a CD pressing a few years back that was supposedly at the right speed. And ever since then, people have been working out whether or not it's slightly too fast or slightly too slow. And Technics allows a very, very precise adjustment for that on a little slider at the side.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's just, and they say it's just an interesting point. It's worth mentioning, what it's there for.
Yeah. I should explain it better, but I can't because I'm stupid. But it's the stroboscopic system it's a very simple way to reference that the thing is running at the right speed.
Cool.
That I made sound difficult.
Sure, for sure. Okay, well, we're going to take a little break now, and we'll be back shortly. Recharge our vessel.
Yep.
We'll speak shortly. Welcome back to part 2 of Tea Time with Alan and Pete. We were talking about turntables, and we are looking at turntables specifically under £3,000. So next in our lineup, this is one that I found surprising when we were going through the list. It's a turntable from Kuzma. It's the Star VS. Now, Kuzma are well known for their turntables. And good quality, high price turntables. And I was surprised that we found one under £3,000 within this category. Yeah,
in fairness, we're just about stretching it a little bit. It's that this is the turntable is the Kuzma Star S has a matching Stogie S turn arm, and the Stogie S and I think Star VS take it a little above 3K, but again, it's not quite, it's not in the super high category. Obviously, you need a good cartridge with that. One of the things Kuzma did a few years back was they looked at how to make the simplest but best turntable they could possibly find, and they always make high mass turntables, and they kind of thought, well, what can we do? And we'll strip away as much as we can. And what essentially they ended up with was a big brass T-bar with a bearing and a platter on one side and an arm tube hole at the other. And it's a very simple but a very effective way of making a turntable. It sits on 3 O-rings, so that there are no feet. There's no, obviously that means there's no adjustment of leveling or anything like that. You've got to get the platter, you've got to get the turntable on a level platform, and Kuzma make a good platform for that as well. Basically, this is a turntable stripped down to its raw basics, and it sounds great as a consequence. The arm that they recommend with it is a unipivot, which means as opposed to a traditional bearing where you've got with a unipivot, you literally sit the arm rests on a point. So that gives it an awful lot of freedom in all sorts of ways, which is great. It can be problematic because it's a question of how good your engineering is, but fortunately Kuzma's engineering is first rate. And as a consequence, it's a great sounding arm. I mean, it's a wonderful package. It's got very much that sort of flavor of high end. It's a nice big sound. It's really good with imaging and spatial quality, and it's pretty fast. It's got some excellent bass to it, but it sounds very good. It sounds very balanced. It's a good deck. Again, it's a turntable that you really need to use a good cartridge with. And I mean, Kuzma do make their own range of cartridges, the CAR range, and one of those would probably be a good start, but other ones are available from Hana and Autophon, and as I said, Audio Technica before. So yeah, there's many that you could work with, but that is a potentially a wonderful, very basic looking, skeletal looking turntable. And it's also, you know, in terms of turntables, there are a few you could use in hand-to-hand combat, quite like the Kuzma, if you can lift it.
Yeah, and on a side note with Kuzma, we have in our next issue, the September issue, we have the Saphir arm we're reviewing, don't we?
Yeah, we're looking at which is going from one end to the other, because the Saphir 9 is the most expensive tone arm I think Kuzma has ever made, and that's saying something. But it's wonderful. I mean, it's a 9-inch arm with a arm tube made of synthetic sapphire, which is the lightest and rigidest thing you could put on an arm, which is exactly what you need for an arm tube. And as a consequence, it sounds sensational. It sounds, I mean, we're not going to spoil the review there, but yeah, it lives up to its hype. And then some.
Okay, good. So next on the lineup, we have the EAT, abbreviated a European Audio Team Prelude tone arm. Now that's the cheapest one that we're talking about today. Sorry, best value one at £999. Now that's quite an interesting little number, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, EAT started life making valves, tubes, and little tube dampers. And Josephina from EAT is married to Heinz Lichtenegger, who runs Project, and they share a love of turntables and a factory that makes very good turntables. So they really can work well together to make a high-end product that is more affordable than it has any right to be at, given its price and performance. And we found that pretty much throughout the board. I mean, the most expensive turntables get quite you know, they're high mass, high-end turntables that if you were a turntable manufacturer on your own, sitting there without having that big project factory with you, you know, to hand, that would cost tens of thousands, much more than the product actually costs. So you're sort of buying a high-end turntable in everything except it forgot to price itself as high-end. So it's got the sort of values in terms of, you know, the looks, the finish, sound quality is very good. Everything about it is fine, and it's the start of a range that goes from pretty affordable right up to not too bad, given it sits there in company that should be, you know, 80-90 grand. So it's all good stuff. And yeah, I mean, EAT make proper sort of solidly built belt drive turntables, usually with good arms, and always, yeah, just a good solid introduction to high end at whichever level you look at. Once again, you need a good cartridge, and again, we'd be looking possibly at the Hana range. I don't think as you go further up the EAT range, you would be looking at things like Koetsu's, and EAT does its own Joe number 5 moving coil cartridge, which is probably a little rich for this turntable's blood, but it's still a very good turntable package.
Sure, excellent. Okay, thank you. The penultimate one on our list is from Cambridge Audio. It's the is it the Alva TT, which comes at £1,500. Nice little package there. Yeah, and it's a very ambitious project from Cambridge Audio. I mean, Cambridge is a company it's a clever company. It makes intelligent products at a range of prices. There's very few. It's a company that doesn't have any sort of
excess weight in it. It's everything they make is well timed, well priced, and not there's no extras, there's no sort of fluff to the thing. It's a good proper product. And in this, again, I think they've nailed it. This is a belt drive turntable that sorry, it's a direct drive turntable at a price where you'd normally find a belt drive. It's a very strong contender for a really good sounding system, and it just works.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Very impressed with it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then finally, we have the product from Torrens or Thorens
or anything you care to name. It's the company was German, then it was Swiss, then it was German again, then it was Swiss German, then it was German Swiss, then it was Chinese German Swiss, then it was Swiss German Chinese. I mean, that's not strictly true. It's only been through a couple of, but I think it's one of those words that you'll find 30 different, you'll find a number of different pronunciations for. I think Thorens, the British one is like Thorens, which is really flat, but I think you speak to Germans, it's Thorens, and there's all sorts of ways. It's definitely not Thorns. That's the big one. Anyway,
however one chooses to pronounce it, it's the TD 1601, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is slightly different, isn't it? Because it's in its own casing and it's suspended semi-automatic.
Yeah, I mean, this is
just what that means.
Okay, sure. First things first. The company has, notice how I'm not saying the name wrong. The company has had a long reputation for making turntables. They have been making them since, I think, about 1910. And they have made some absolute classics in the time. And one of the big ones was the TD 160, which was made around the 1960s, 1970s. It's a beautiful deck. It was one of the first suspended turntables, which means it's got a bouncy suspension that you put the record on, it bounces up and down. And they made when they say semi-automatic, what this means is that the arm will lift at the end of the record, and it won't put itself back, and it won't. A fully automatic turntable means you press a button, the arm lifts up, finds the record, sits down, plays it, lifts up, and takes it off. The downside to that is that every part of those mechanical processes potentially introduces some noise. A semi-automatic is just a lift at the end. So it'll sit there and say, I'm done, thank you, which stops the cartridge from sitting in a groove and slowly wearing out over time. And you come waking up after unconsciousness from a good listening session, waking up and hearing, and you realize that you spent an entire night letting everyone hear your outer groove of your record. Not that I've ever done that. Anyway, this is not quite a recreation of the classic 160. It's a homage to it, but it's a lovely looking turntable as well, in terms of that sort of classic look with a wood finish and a lighter top plate, and it just looks. Part of the thing, as we said, if a turntable's got to sit there, it's got to look good. And I think in this respect, this is one of the ones that really has that sort of classic vinyl appeal. And I know possibly people criticize it for being a bit retro. And if you don't want retro, then you go for something like the Verter. But this is just, it looks right. It looks timeless, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's really nice classic
Sure.
kit, for sure.
What I'd also like to say is that this is just a snapshot. There are so many turntables, and we're looking more in this sort of area. I mean, there are companies there that as I mentioned, Project, there's Riga, there's a whole bunch of companies that we haven't got round to at some point with their latest models, although some of them we have just done. We've just done the whole System 1 thing from Riga, which is just off the charts in terms of high value. But we are constantly impressed at what we're seeing from this degree of turntable. This level of turntable is producing a lot of really, really good stuff. So yes, you don't have to spend a fortune anymore to get really, really high performance. And these are big, fine examples of how you can get very, very fine performance out of a turntable package at this level.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And if you want to find out more, if you head to our website and go to the analog sources section, you'll see the 7 we've just talked about there, and with a little précis, and you can look at the, there's a link to each, the full review on each of those. And we'll put the link to that in the comments below. So yeah, thank you for joining us today for Tea Time, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.